Fantastic, fantastic. Hello, hello, and welcome, everybody. Gosh, lots of people are already joining us here today. Thank you. And I am incredibly excited to have Mr. Nick Rowland, I nearly call you Noland, Mr. Nick Rowland with us today. So he has an incredible wealth of information from, gosh, everything from being dyslexic through to something about cannabis farming, through to having a very successful property portfolio, everything from residential to serviced accommodation, through to commercial. And I am, very honoured and privileged to call Nick my friend as well as an associate and a colleague. We both met each other through Touchstone education, where we are both now coaches and mentors. So that's basically how we met. So just for everybody, the way it's going to work is we are going to have a chat, Nick and I, for the next sort of 35-40 minutes, and just really go through how Nick has managed to achieve the successes that he has. And if you have any questions, then honestly jump on it, because Nick is one of the most knowledgeable people that I know. So if you want to take advantage, jump on it now and do ask those questions, and we will be able to, if you could either ask him direct, or you can just pop the questions in the chat, and we will do our best to get them answered. So Mr. Nick Rowland, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Here on my private island, enjoying the sun.
So, for those of you who
the cleaner hasn't been yet.
I love it. Yeah, for those of you who are listening and rather than viewing, Nick is looking like he's on the most beautiful desert island with a palm tree behind him. So he's very lucky. I, on the other hand, am sat here in my scarf and my woolly hat, trying to keep warm. So fantastic. Right. Well, let's just jump straight in, Nick. Let's hear a little bit about your background so people know where you've come from before you really kind of came into property. So what does your sort of career look like?
Well, bad time at school, I'm afraid. I had dyslexia before dyslexia was invented. You were just known as thick in those days. But I'm a determined little soldier, and I didn't let that put me down. So I thought, okay, what's the ideal career for someone who's dyslexic? I know, I'll go and write speeches for government ministers and answer parliamentary questions, all the kind of spelling stuff that dyslexics love. But I really enjoyed it. Thought to myself, I'm really at the centre of power here, making policy and rubbing shoulders with government ministers. And then I went to a meeting where there were a load of bankers. And it suddenly occurred to me that it wasn't the government that was leading the country, it was the bankers and the money men and the markets, as Liz Truss has realised recently. So I was offered a job with a big bank, and did that for a short while. And I was working as a consultant for a little while, and then I got headhunted to join them. And I thought, right, okay, I'll do it for a year, see how it goes. And every year they promoted me. And eventually ended up as the global head of operational risk for one of their largest divisions in the IT division. So staff all over the world, flying all over the world. It was a great life. But, the higher you go in any organisation, and the same happened in the civil service, eventually you get marked down as being too expensive and you get fired, you get made redundant. So I always thought to myself, I've got to have other strings to my bow. And that's what brought me into property. And I started in property. Well, my first property was purchased before you were even born, Emma. But my first real buy.
Oh, you make me feel so young. I love that. Thank you. Keep saying it.
No, make me feel old. So I've been in property. Started off in buy-to-lets, and from buy-to-lets I thought, oh, let's go bigger than this. Let's really scare myself. Let's go into HMOs. So I did HMOs, and then I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have somewhere I could go and stay occasionally that I love but makes me money. So then I have a portfolio of furnished holiday lets down in St. Ives in Cornwall, my favouriteest place in the world. And then that's when I came to Touchstone, because I had the double whammy of getting divorced and losing my job in the same year. And I had some redundancy money, and I thought, do you know what? I've never really made a lot of money out of property. I must be doing something wrong. I don't think I am, but I must be, because surely you can't have all this work and not make a lot of money. So I invested in an education, and I've never looked back really. And I learned about serviced accommodation. That was the first thing I did, serviced accommodation. And I always remember I'd bought this tiny property in a rundown part of Merseyside, and going around the letting agents and saying, I just learned all about serviced accommodation. It's a great strategy, and I'm going to do it in this house. And they laughed. Oh my, did they laugh.
Oh.
They just said, don't be ridiculous. That's never going to be successful. You're going to get £450 a month, and you're going to have probably a single lady with 2 babies moving in, good tenants, and that's it. And I thought, do you know, what have I got to lose? Let's just try it for a couple of months. Open up the diary on booking.com, Airbnb, and let's just see if there is a demand there. And this is pre-DNA, which I absolutely love for analysing areas. So I opened up the calendars, and lo and behold, a professor from Dublin University was my first guest, and had to interview him and ask him, why is it you want to come to not the best part of Liverpool to stay for a holiday? And he just said, Nick, I want to, I'm not going to do the Irish accent, by the way, but I will if asked.
And for entertainment.
What brings you here? And he said, I just want to immerse myself in the Scouse experience. I want to see ladies with trout lips and colours in their hair walking around in their nightwear at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I want to hear that accent, and I want to hear that humour. And this is very close to the football stadia in Liverpool. So I'm going to have a wander around there as well. It's going to be fantastic. And I got a 10 review from him. And that was it. Then I had the bug and thought, well, yeah, we've got to go bigger and better from here. But unfortunately, because I just got divorced, and being the generous soul that I am, most of the money went in the divorce, and I had virtually nothing really. So that's when I hit on the idea of setting up my own serviced accommodation management business in Liverpool. And that went really rather well, I have to say.
Amazing.
For 12 months.
Amazing,
Yeah.
Amazing. So I just want to, could somebody just write in the chat that I can see the numbers here increasing, but nobody has responded to the chat. I just want to make sure, could somebody just write in the chat that you can hear us? I know, oh, fantastic. Oh, look, everyone's going fine. Yes, brilliant. It was all very quiet for a long time. I thought maybe we were, yeah, it was a bit like tumbleweed, Nick. So that is amazing. I just wanted to pick on a couple of things, Nick, not related to serviced accommodation, but I think it's very interesting and very important, especially I've got two boys that have dyslexia. I mean, obviously in when you were saying that, you know, growing up, it wasn't necessarily a thing, but do you think over time, do you think it's been of a benefit for you? I mean, just for instance, one of my sons especially, he looks at things so totally different to me, and he'll say, well, why don't you just, you know, obviously in that teenage way, because he's 17, oh, why don't you just do it like that? And I'm like, oh, because I just would never have thought about it like that. Is that kind of the way your mind works, or how did you see it as a real restriction or a benefit?
I definitely see it as a gift, really. It didn't feel like that when I was at school and everyone got it. They understood formal education and how it works, and they could tell the time really quickly, and they could read. I couldn't read or write till I was at 10, and then suddenly it kind of all clicked into place. Luckily, I had a headmaster who kind of looked at this strange young man who seemed bright, but on the evidence before him wasn't. And he invested a hell of a lot of time in me, which I'm eternally grateful for. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why I think I've been successful in my career. I have got this ability to look at a problem and find multiple solutions for it. I was in a meeting yesterday, for instance, and somebody had an idea about a particular project, and within minutes I'd come up with 3 other potential strategies that they could have thought about but didn't. And to me that seems really simple, but I realize not everybody's mind is like that. So yeah, it has its downsides, but I would say without it I wouldn't be where I am today, really. It's been a benefit. You've just got to stay confident, and that's where a lot of people fall down. They kind of believe what they're told. You are stupid, you're never going to make anything of yourself. And yeah, I like to say that I used to wear the pointy hat with a D on, which should stand for dunce, but in my case, it stood for determination. I wasn't going to let anything get in my way.
I love that. I love that. When Nick and I were discussing what we might call this, that was one of the titles, Dunce to Developer. I said I was not going to use that. I didn't feel that was correct. But yeah, I like your humor, Nick. Yeah, so amazing. So to me, it's almost I know the thing that I absolutely love about property is not really property, in fairness. It's actually the whole creativity around it. And it is that kind of masterminding. And I know you and I and various others have been sat around a dinner table on numerous occasions talking through things. And it's kind of like somebody will mention something and that'll spark a creative thought going with somebody else. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And do you have a group of people that you kind of rely on as far as, helping you talk through your deals, or is it kind of just yourself? How do you have that?
Well, I'm not good with numbers. That is part of the dyslexia. I'm not good with numbers. So for me, not to involve people would be pretty stupid, really. I think everyone needs to recognise what they are good at and what they're not good at. And for the things that they're not good at, they need to get someone who is good at it. And it's hard sometimes. Yes, I could do almost anything. I've rewired houses, I've replumbed houses, I've decorated, done it all. But is that best use of my time? And am I fully equipped to see the pitfalls in things that I do? No, when it comes to numbers, I absolutely, I'll reverse numbers and come out with the answer I wanted, that this is the best deal in the world. And then, So no, I have a trusted team of people around me who know what my weak points are, and they fill in for me and make sure that I don't make mistakes. And it is. My grandmother always used to have this picture of Jesus above her bed, and I never understood what it meant as a child, but it said, "Unto thine own self be true." And as I grew older, I thought, that's absolutely spot on. You've got to be truthful about what you are good at, what you're not so good at, and get help. And don't be sorry to say, "I'm no good at this." It's a blind spot. I'm sorry, but I am good at this. So it's not a complete disaster.
Oh, Nick, that's such a lovely thing to say. And Alison has said, thank you for talking about dyslexia. My son she loves D for determination, and she will be replaying this for him. So I absolutely love that. And also, I'm totally with you in knowing, and I've been on a kind of a mindset journey, and knowing that where your weaknesses are. And I absolutely love, so I don't know if you've done it, but understanding like your wealth dynamics, your talent dynamics, and you're only one small part of a much bigger picture, and you're never going to be able to do anything. And I know a lot of us with small businesses, don't we? It's like, oh, we've got to try and do everything, but inherently there are ways. And that's where you've said with creativity, whether it's having a JV partner, where it's having a chat like this with friends, where you can talk through things to help you get that. And I know when people say, oh, I can't do that, I can't do that, it's like, it doesn't matter, you know, find somebody who can do what you want, but you know, they're strong where you're weak, and join forces, and it can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it sucks a lot at you when you're doing something that you're not particularly good at, and you get bogged down in the detail and you miss out on big opportunities. The next big deal passes you by because you're trying ever so hard to be the all singing, all dancing. It's okay not to be perfect. I realised that at a very young age, but it's not okay to ignore the talents that you've got. So concentrate on those and let the rest of the world deal with the other stuff for you. Have a good accountant around you, you know. And my son was trying to get into property, and of course you don't want to work with your dad. That would be the worst thing in the world. And I said, well, no disrespect to you, son, but you're only a kid, and although you're highly intelligent, I think that you need to have someone around you, what is generally called a key person of influence, somebody that you can work with and you benefit from their knowledge and from the kudos they have when you say, oh yes, I work closely with so-and-so. I think that's really important when you first get started. And I know some of the biggest names out there in books talk about a key person of influence, and how that's a cool way to kind of get the kudos that you'll get ultimately, but you perhaps don't have when you're just starting out on your journey. Align yourself with the experience that you haven't yet got.
That's an amazing piece of advice there. Is there anyone sort of that you could give an example of, or somebody that, you know, somebody's thinking, oh, I really need that, and we're going to jump, you know, into the detail and the nitty gritty of your service accommodation journey, but you know, where could somebody look if they're just sort of starting out? Where would you recommend, and who might they look for?
Well, you know as well as I do, your net worth is your network. And it's through networking and being personable. And even in networking, sometimes you're not the most personable person in the world. You get someone else to do it for you, potentially. That book, Who Not How.
Oh, I love it.
That's a fantastic book. But the guy didn't write it himself. He got somebody else to write it. I mean, that's the ultimate, really, isn't it? Get someone to write a book because you haven't got the time or the skill to do it. So, yeah, just through networking, find someone that you have some affinity with, who shares your values, which is hugely important. So, I mean, one of the books that really made a difference to me when I started getting formally educated was John Martini's Values Factor. I wish I'd read that book years ago before I'd even got married, because it's so important to work with people whose values that you're aligned with. Otherwise, yes, you can rub along nicely for a while, but ultimately the cracks will start to appear if you haven't got a shared vision of what's right, what's wrong, and where you both want to get to.
Amazing. I absolutely love that. Yes, and also you were saying about not writing it yourself. So if anyone hasn't found Chat GPT, then do go and have a look at that, because that's another place that's a fantastic resource, especially if you're trying to write a book. So let's jump straight into it. So you mentioned that along the way in your career, alongside that, you built up a portfolio. You had buy-to-lets, HMOs, and then Instant Ives. You had some furnished holiday lets. Was that pre kind of getting more educated, so to speak? I know you kind of talk about this kind of moment where you found out kind of a lot more. So you had done an awful lot, you know, beforehand anyway.
Yes, I mean, I'd read books and gone onto council websites and had a look at what was on there. And I'd done as much as I could do, really, and you know, line myself with a good accountant who gave me some advice, but they weren't property experts. The accountant I had, he was just a good bookkeeper, essentially. I just knew in my heart of hearts, you can't be working this hard and not be mega rich. Luckily, I was on a 6-figure salary, similar type of bonuses, obscene amounts of money and bonuses. And that to some extent was holding up my property empire. And that shouldn't be the case. Property is about giving you that financial freedom, and that wasn't happening for me at all. So I knew instinctively, despite what my bookkeeper stroke accountant was saying, that I was doing everything right, that I couldn't be doing everything right, that there must be other strategies or other ways of structuring your business or structuring your tax affairs such that all that hard work was actually benefiting me and not, as my second wife said to me, Nick, property's always been your dream. It's become my bloody nightmare because you're off swanning around the world and I'm having to deal with tenant inquiries. I never signed up for this. On your bike.
Oh no. So I know that you then you then sort of got I think you jumped in with Touchstone and you sort of learnt about this sort of serviced accommodation, but you mentioned that it kind of coincided with losing your job and getting divorced. So that's, my gosh, I mean, most people would have climbed under a rock and kind of hibernated for 20 years, but knowing you, that was not the case. So you didn't exactly start in a very promising position. So could you sort of tell us a little bit about how you went forward from there?
Well, I walked out that second marriage with $5,000 and my pension, which has proved to be my salvation. It's amazing what you can do with pensions. But yeah, I just had $5,000 and I thought, well, that's not a deposit for a house. What do I do? And I did get some redundancy shortly after the divorce. And that's when I bought this small house in a rundown part of Liverpool that I was just going to do as a buy-to-let, turned into my first serviced accommodation. But then I was looking around for people to manage that property for me because I wanted to be hands-free, because I realised that I do have a busy working life, and I didn't want to make another career for myself. I wanted someone else to do it. And looking around, in those days, so we're going back 5 years now, that there wasn't really that much around. So I thought, well, what are the options here? One of the options was do it yourself, set up your own serviced accommodation business and cleaning business. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about cleaning, as both my wives will tell you. But I thought, well, I don't need to know about that. I just need to know people who do it and employ them. And I took myself off to meet a few owners of laundries. And if you've never spoken to a laundry owner, you are missing a massive trick. They know everything that's going on in the city. They know when all the events are coming on. They know who the movers and shakers are, who the best cleaners are, who the best maintenance men are. They are an invaluable source. And I made it my mission to get friendly with at least 2 of the large laundry owners. And that really helped me enormously. And so yeah, I set up that business within 4 months, I think it was. I had 32 properties under my control.
4 months, Nick. How did you do that? So we've got people that you and I would have mentored or coached who are struggling to get one property in that time. Certainly I got one property in 4 months. So that was the difference between our journeys. My goodness. So how on earth did you do that? Let's hear how you managed it.
That N word again that one shouldn't mention. Networking.
Wow.
Yeah, I went to local networking meetings, met predominantly people from the London area who didn't have enough money to invest in London, so decided they were going to invest in Merseyside. And they all wanted the same thing, a reliable management company. And I impressed one of that number. They had 6 properties that they gave me immediately. And then they referred me on to someone else, and it just snowballed. And I felt it was just getting unmanageable, really. I was having difficulty employing enough people in time for the demand that was there. It was huge. Once you get a good reputation, and once you're known in a network and you're known by those laundry companies who kept on passing on referrals to me, because everybody wants the dream, don't they? They want the money coming in, but they don't want the hassle of having to deal with the tenants, with the cleaners that don't turn up, and that huge logistical nightmare.
What do you mean cleaners not turning up? Does it not all just happen like beautifully and easily, Nick?
The cleaners, strangely, that when the holidays come, I think it's the excitement of the kids being off school. They just get ill. I think they just collapse. And miraculously, they're well again as soon as the holidays are over. I never did understand what it was. I tried speaking to a few doctor friends of mine, but no, they weren't able to fill in the detail on that. But yeah, it's a problem, a big, big problem. And yes, I did that business for over a year. And to be honest, it was, I wanted 2 things out of it. One, I wanted to earn enough money to build some deposits to buy more serviced accommodation, tick in the box, achieve that. But also, I always knew I wanted to be a property mentor, and I couldn't just go on a course where they say, "Oh yeah, you can start a business with next to money at all," and not have done it myself. I needed to prove to myself that I could start with next to nothing, and have that money coming in. And it was hard work, really hard work. As I say, it's unless you know beforehand what the demand is, suddenly there's a tsunami of demand coming in. You don't want to turn anything away. But I was spending half my time interviewing new clients and half my time interviewing new employees. So quite a network of people that I depended on for the business, and just coordinating all of that. I mean, some of the stories I could tell you would absolutely turn your toes up. I remember my first day in managing a large property, and the cleaners didn't turn up. This was my first day. I'd been presenting in the boardroom of that bank only a couple of days before, and now I had a brush in my hand and I was cleaning the toilets because there was no one else left to do it, and the guests were just about to arrive. And I just thought, how the mighty have fallen.
How grounding it is, I think, is the way I look at it. Have you ever thought your head was in the clouds?
Absolutely, it's good for you to have that. I'm not used to be able to, I want this doing, and it would just happen, or I need to get to the airport, suddenly there's a car there to take you. And that was my life. And then I'm cleaning toilets. And yes, it kind of it grounded me a huge amount. But then I was a year into it. I kind of said, I'll do it for a year. I'll get that experience. I'll get the deposits. And I was talking to my sister about it about 5:30 in the morning. And the worst thing was she was answering me back. Why? Well, she'd actually been dead 10 years at that stage. I was hallucinating. I was so tired, putting in massive days. And I thought, this is crazy. I'm working now as hard as I did when I worked in the bank, 18-hour days, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. So, yeah, I had to get that balance back in again. So, I would say always make sure you know what the demand is before you step into a new venture, whatever it is. and make sure that you can meet that demand, because you don't want to let people down. And if you're like me and your word is you bond, then you're in for a lot of bloody hard work, because you're going to have to fill in if people let you down, and they will.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Stephanie just has asked, what do you mean by laundry companies? Do you mean like dry cleaning, kind of washing companies?
Nothing to do with my banking pass, money laundering, nothing like that. Yes, the people who launder the sheets, the towels, and rent those out to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So
yeah, there's. I met one guy in Liverpool, another one in Birkenhead on the other side of the water, and yeah, they have become friends, and they are such a mine of information. They know everything that's going on. They knew who the good, the bad, and the ugly are in the business.
Amazing, amazing. And when you talked about sort of networking, I spoke about this actually, I did a live the other day, because quite often I think people turn up to networking events without any kind of preconceived goal or anything like that. Did you sort of go with specifics? I'm looking for people who've got properties that they want to rent out. Did you stand up and do a 60-second, or whatever it is, a 30-second thing? How did you go about that? Because I just think it's often the nitty-gritty that people really struggle with.
Yeah, being prepared is absolutely essential. You have to know what you're going there for, otherwise you're just going to have a few drinks and have a pleasant evening, but you're not actually going to achieve anything. You're there to further your business and to further your knowledge. So you need to know what it is that you're going there for, and to have your business cards to hand out. Have an iPad with you with examples of the type of things that you're doing. Be very understand your numbers if it's other people's money that you're looking for an investment. And yeah, so I've done all the things you suggested. I've stood up and given my 60-second intro into what I do. And it's a lot of hard work, and you shouldn't just be going to, for instance, property networking meetings, because everyone's in the same pool there. I'd also advise you to do things like, as I've done, go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings, because you're meeting a broad spectrum of businesses there, and you never know who you might meet. So on my journey, networking in that kind of environment, I met an insurance guy who had to deal with people who were flooded or burnt out, and they needed accommodation, but they didn't need accommodation for 6 months. They only needed it for 3 months while their property was being renovated. Excellent opportunity to offer them serviced accommodation. Similarly, you meet lawyers who are responsible for probate, and you've got a warring family who don't care really about what they're going to get for the property. They just want their bit of it, and they want it quickly. So that's where you can get below market value properties from. So networking is just the best thing, but it's a job in itself, and you've got to devote at least 2 evenings a week to it, in my view, and get out there and meet as many people as you can, and you never know where it's going to lead to. And I always ask the additional question: if someone says they've got a property, I always say, what other properties have you got? I've done this as a networking meeting. A guy was trying to sell a pub. I was very interested in buying it. And I asked that additional question, do you own any other properties? Oh, yeah, I've got 16 of them. And I'm going to sell one a year for the next 16 years to avoid tax. Oh, well, I could help you there. I could find a way of taking over all of those properties for you and reduce your tax bill. Oh, really? Yeah, I'd like to talk to you. Go there with some solutions as well for people. The one I love at the moment, because it's really going to be massive, huge at the end of the year when these cases come to court, is mortgage securitization, telling people about mortgage securitization, which for anyone not listening, when banks or lending institutions lend money out to you as a mortgage, once you've been paying it for about 6 months, they sell that debt on to another company. And that's fine. That's how banks across the world make their money. They're recirculating the money, and then for the money they get for the debt, they then lend that out, and so the circle keeps going. But only in this country, they've been doing a few things. One, they've not registered that at the land registry, that they haven't got a charge on your property anymore. Secondly, they're not informing you that they've moved your debt onto someone else. And thirdly, they're sending you letters to say your interest rate's gone up, and you don't have a relationship with them in theory. So all this went to court about 3 years ago now, with a case involving Santander. And the result was the judge said, well, have you been paid for this debt? Mr. Santander answered, yes, okay. Case is for the plaintiff. He doesn't owe you anything. So that guy's mortgage got written off. And there are a lot of court cases going on currently. I'm part of the class action for property I own. And I'm hopeful that I'll probably get about 70% of my mortgage written off. So, without networking, without speaking to the right people, I would never have known that exists, because there's nothing in the press about it now. But if you just Google mortgage securitization, honestly, this minute or two me talking about it could possibly change your life.
Oh, that's incredible, Nick. Thank you for sharing that. And also with regards to networking, we've actually been talking a lot about networking, hadn't really meant to, but I have put a link in the top because Nick is talking at the Property Wealth Network in London tomorrow evening. So if you actually want to meet Nick in the flesh, then you absolutely can. So I put the link in there if you wanted to go and and sign up for that. I know there's quite a few people in the audience who are going to be there as well, and I certainly am. So I'm looking forward to catching up there. Okay, so you kind of got into this. So let's sort of do the next stage. So obviously you started off with serviced accommodation, you created a monster, you had lots and lots of learning, and then you mentioned that enabled you to, build some deposits. So how did the next leg of the journey look like?
Well, it was just as everyone should be doing, really. Paying your minimal deposit, buying the worst house on the best street, developing it, and again, back to my naughty habits. I was getting involved in that, which I shouldn't do, and it's difficult when you can do things. That's the worst thing. It's best that you just rubbish at something and you don't even attempt it. But it always kills me to have to get people in to do stuff that I know I can do myself. But I know that at the end of the day, I'm good at finding deals. I'm good at analysing deals. And I'm good at finding the money for those deals. And that really should be the end of it for me. I shouldn't be involved in anything else. I should get people to do the rest for me. And so then you've added value to the property, and you can draw money out from that property, out the added value. If you've got it as serviced accommodation, of course, you can use that wonderful thing. What's it called? And I know. So I think I'll probably tell you capital allowances. How can I forget capital allowances? They're wonderful. Yeah, I remember the first time I actually did a capital allowance claim, and I got $250,000 back within 12 weeks of the audit being done. Unbelievable. And then I didn't pay tax for another few years, but it was on a sizable then HMO business, because you used to be able to claim, and still can do to some extent, for the communal areas in HMOs. And I paid a lot of tax, obviously, as a high taxpayer as well.
Amazing.
And so it grew, but I decided, as I was getting a little bit older, that eventually that I needed to have a strategy that would be completely hands-free. And for me these days, that's becoming more and more commercial. But I still like to do serviced accommodation. There's nothing like that thrill of your phone pinging and another bookings come in, and you can see another 500-600 quids come in. And just getting back to the education piece, I'm not in it today, but I've got an apartment in Liverpool that I used to rent out for 600 quid a night, serviced accommodation, which was superb. But I actually live there. And I used to put all my clothes on a hanging rail and wheel it all out and put it into storage, get the cleaners in, put the fluffy dressing gowns out, the exotic fruits, the bottle of champagne in the fridge, maybe even pick up the guests from the station in my Mercedes. And 600 quid a night, it was worth giving up my home to do that. And I had to do it, really. I just needed to make money. But had I kind of been educated at that stage, I think I probably would have followed the crowd, because you could stay in the same building for $250 a night. And as usual, being the chatty kind of guy I was speaking to the people who were staying there, saying, "You do know you could stay in this building for $250 a night. Why did you pay 600? Well, because I love my wife so much and I want her to know it, and this is one way of showing it." Or my secretary has been hugely helpful this year, and she needed to be shown that I cared, so I'm willing to pay to stay in the best place to stay in Liverpool. And
wow, so
yes.
Did you just with that, is that something that you just thought you'd give it a go, or you saw that there was a need? Because that's quite a big thing to do, and maybe doing something so different. How did you price that as well, or was that over time?
I just decided 600 sounded a good amount, because I knew I could go and stay in a hotel while they stayed there. Because the lack of education was the point I was making here. I, for instance, had no idea that when you're in a freehold property and it's in a block of flats, that there might be something in the lease that says you're not allowed to do that, which in fact proved to be the case. And actually, being on a buy-to-let mortgage and using it for serviced accommodation is not clever, and could have resulted in me never getting another mortgage again. But of course, I didn't know that in those days. But this was all around the same time as being made redundant, getting divorced, and joining Touchstone. So I had a lot of learnings very quickly, and I did miss those 600 quid a night when they were coming. But as soon as I realised what I was doing wasn't strictly kosher, I stopped it, obviously.
Thank goodness. Yeah, that sounds like a real worry. So no, I love that, Nick. Okay, so then so you've kind of now you've built up the portfolio, and we've got to touch on as well your pension side of things and how you've used that. And yeah, let's go into that before I've got a couple more questions.
Okay, so when I was in the bank, I was hugely busy, and I said to my personal secretary one day, I want a day, just one day, when I sit and do something for me. So block out next Tuesday. It's going to be find out about my pension day. So anyway, she managed to give me an hour that Tuesday. And when I looked at what was happening with my pension, I couldn't believe it. The bank had invested it in the lowest risk things that they could invest in, just so that they couldn't have their asses sued. And my pension was just creeping up. I thought, for God's sake, I've given my life to this organisation. I've lost 2 wives due to this organisation because of the time that I'm spending working all over the world. I'd honestly thought somebody somewhere was looking after me and would make sure that I'd be okay, but that wasn't the case at all. You're on your own, folks. You need to manage these things yourself. So I looked at my pension and I thought, what can I do? So I wasn't going to let them run it anymore. I drew it all out and I put it into a self-invested personal pension, a SIP, and I just betted essentially on the highest risk stocks that I could find. And luckily it paid off, and I tripled what was in my pension pot, at which stage I moved it over to a SAS, a self-administered scheme, which is for 11 people, as opposed to one for a SIP. But the great thing about a SAS is you can borrow money out of the SAS, and that's essentially what I did. I bought a commercial property, which was a betting office, and above it there were 4 flats which I wanted to run as serviced accommodation. So I was able to pay for the bottom part, the shop, out of my SAS. Everything went in there, and I was getting that completely tax-free. It's a tax-free wrapper, so all the rent that was coming in from the tenant was tax-free. And then I borrowed money out of the SAS to pay the deposit to buy the serviced accommodation above it, and built 4 serviced accommodation units above there. So, and that's a brilliant model, really. And when my son, who's in business with me, realised, he just said, "This is incredible, Dad. I honestly didn't think you could get anything out of your pension until you were 55. And he had, I think, 46,000, something like that, which he brought into the SAS as well. And for him to be able to get his grubby little hands on that when he was still relatively young was very exciting too. And so yeah, that was the game changer. A mixture of serviced accommodation and having a decent pension, which meant that I could buy commercial property, I could lend money out of my SAS as well to do things with it, is just been a total game changer. What could have been a rather impoverished old age after 2 divorces and giving everything away, it's turned out to be, I'm going to be fine, which is very relieving. But I think had I not educated myself, I would never have known about this.
Well, you don't know what you don't know inherently, do you?
Yeah,
and that's the
I
thing.
sat down with Paul Smith, and we went through everything that I had, and I came away with, I think it was 300 action points. I mean, you're not educated when you've got 300 action points. Some of them were fairly minor, but some of them were pretty bloody radical, like when did you last write your will, and who's the recipient of everything you own, actually. Yeah. I wrote it 30 years ago, and it was my first wife who was due to get everything and is going to get my civil service pension as well. So, yeah, it's the best thing I ever did, and getting myself educated and finding out about serviced accommodation. It really is a game changer. And then finding out how you can use your pensions as well was the icing on the cake, really.
Amazing. Absolutely love that. So kind of moving on, and this is something that's quite interesting. We kind of agree but disagree in certain respects.
Violently disagree.
But a question is, so you've spoken about Liverpool, you've spoken about St Ives in Cornwall. Let's talk about kind of areas. And I know you can be a bit of a nomad. I'm like, where are you, Nick? And you'll be one end of the country. And where are you, Nick? And you'll be somewhere else. So for you, what has geography meant for your property business? Have you chosen a specific area and just grown that, or you've talked about a few places? How's that come about?
Yeah, it comes down to networking again, really. And I know that you say you should invest in the area that you live in because that gives you all the knowledge of that area, etc. And that's absolutely true. And that's why I invested very heavily in Merseyside. And, I look at the news and see what's happening. We came out the EU, and Liverpool as an area declined because Liverpool as a port was on the wrong side of the country for trading with Europe, but now we're no longer in there. and we'll be trading with the rest of the world, then all that commerce that was associated with Liverpool will start to come back in, and a lot of Chinese money's been coming from Manchester, and they've realised that Liverpool is going to grow. And looking at the news, you see that free ports are being developed, and there's a massive project to develop the northern docks in Liverpool. So it's still a great place to invest, one of the top places to invest at the moment. And that's great, having that knowledge and knowing intimately the people and how to deal with the people, because as one myself, Liverpool people aren't the easiest people to deal with. They're quite opinionated, and can be tricky customers. Apologies to any Scousers who are listening, but we are. But it's always done with wonderful humour, so you don't realise that it doesn't feel as bad. But but then I think you need to not be blinkered about where the opportunities are. So I will look at a deal anywhere, as long as it stacks up. I'm happy to look at anywhere. I mean, St Ives, for instance, the furnished holiday lets down in St Ives. I'd gone for a day to St Ives, fell in love with the place, didn't know anything about it, and just decided, I love this place, I want to own a property down here. So how do I go about that? I was living in Sheffield at the time, 360 miles away. You can't possibly manage a furnished holiday let from that distance. So took myself off for the weekend, went to see the local estate agents, found out what properties are available. Also took the time to ask them, do they know any local builders who could help with the renovation of somewhere, and then talking to the builders. I found out where they all drink, which in St Ives is a very dodgy pub called the Three Ferrets. If you go in there, it's a bit like Christmas on the Dock Road in Liverpool, where everyone does their Christmas shopping. You just sit there and say what you want, and somebody goes off, nicks it for you, and brings it back and puts it in your bag. But they don't wrap it, so there's a business opportunity there. I think. But similarly, the Three Ferrets, you go in there, you can find your builders, you can find the wives' builders are also cleaners, and you go out and find the finance men locally, and before you know where you are, you've got a power team around you, and as long as you're personable, you do the right thing, you don't stitch people up, you take them out for a meal or a coffee, and you soon build up people and trust with those people, and therefore you can invest in that area. Or alternatively, I've invested in areas where other members of my family live and they know the area. So you do need to have local knowledge. You either have to have it yourself or know somebody who does, and you can do that again by networking.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you. And now what would be interested in is maybe just a little story. We're nearly at the top of the hour, so if you've got any questions. So Alison is very inspirational, and she has also said that Nick, your story is like a mirror of hers as well. She'd lost half her property business through to divorce, and all of these other things. So that's a great share there.
Add on to that demonic possession, being arrested for being a drugs baron.
So let's hear this. Let's hear some of the bad.
So many stories. These are the good stories that keep you grounded, continue to keep you grounded.
So let's have a share, Nick, of some kind of horror story, just to let people know that it's doesn't all necessarily smell of roses. There are things that can go wrong, and then we'll close up the day with a little bit of a chat around mindset.
Yeah, sure. I suppose the purchase of that first commercial business, the commercial bit has been an absolute dream, not a problem from day one. They pay their rent on time, goes into my pension scheme, completely tax-free, so that's building up very nicely. And then there were the 4 apartments above it with vacant possession. 2 days before we're due to complete. The lawyer phones me up and says, Nick, you tell me this was vacant possession. I said, it is. And he said, there's 2 ASTs in place here. And so I phoned up the vendor and said, what the hell's going on? He said, oh, well, you never said you were buying this with the pension fund, and it's taken longer than I thought, and I needed some money. So I've done 2 ASTs for 6 months apiece. So I've done you a favour, really. And I said, well, no, you haven't, because this is going to be serviced accommodation, not ASTs. So I knocked on the door of one of, I told them to go ahead anyway, knocked on the door of one of my tenants, and the door flew open, and he had a baseball bat in his hand and said, step 1 foot over that threshold and you won't have a head anymore. This is my house. You're not coming in. I said, well, I own it. I want to have a look around it. And he says, you're not coming in. Full stop. And he just shut the door. And the door stayed shut for 2.5 years. Terrible, sad story of him being in Afghanistan, PTSD. Then he realised he had cancer. His mother came to look after him. She dropped down dead with a heart attack. He went into a spiral of drugs and drink and started hoarding. And oh my God, the day luckily, being the kind man I am, I didn't just put a Section 21 or a Section 8 notice to evict him. I decided to work with different departments of the council to say, look, here's a person with real problems, and we need to work together to sort this out. And the council said, just kick him out. And I said, I'm not prepared to do it. This guy served his country, and I think he deserves better, really. Yes, he's an objectionable sod, but I'm prepared to put up with it. I'm still getting paid by the council in the meantime for his rent, so that's okay. Anyway, to cut a long story short, he went, but the men who went in to tidy up after him, one of whom tried to kill himself because he was convinced that there was a demon in there. We had an exorcism performed. So that was one. And then upstairs, I had a man who was harbouring an escaped murderer. And I'd approached this escaped murderer, and the police said, you're lucky to be alive, Nick. This guy doesn't talk. He doesn't think like other people. He just stabs people. That's what he does. So you're lucky to be alive. Yeah. I let my son do the first tenant into one of the places, and it turned out he was a male prostitute. And I looked on the cameras that we'd installed, and there was all people on the stairs waiting to go in for their 10 minutes of fun. And
oh my God,
it's enough to break you, really. But you've got to learn from all these experiences and know that ultimately in property, whatever happens, you will get your money back, and all will be well in the end, because it's bricks and mortar, and it's the best investment you can have. Right. And you've just got to stay positive, not let it weigh you down.
I love that. I love that. Well, Nick, that I'm just a huge advocate of mindset, and I totally believe that you can have all the knowledge in the world. You can have read all the books. You can even take pretty good action, but unless your mindset is in the right place, I still feel that it's going to be a challenge for you to be successful. You're always you're such an absolute powerhouse of positivity, but is that something that comes naturally to you? Is it something that you've had to work on? Be great to hear a little bit about your sort of mindset.
I think it comes back to my youth, really, Emma, and everyone telling me I was stupid, and me thinking, I don't think I am stupid. Okay, I can't read and I can't write. I admit it. I can't tell the time. I don't know left from right. I do write every number the wrong way round. So there's clearly something not right about me, but I refuse to believe that I'm any less intelligent than anyone else. And I was just very determined, and I would not have got to where I got into, senior civil servant, and then from there into, one of the top jobs in banking, and all because I always had this little voice at the back of my mind, kind of saying, you need to prove yourself, you need to do better, and I think I have proved it now. But I enjoy the thrill now of difficult situations and finding a way around it. It's almost a hobby for me.
I love it. I love it. It is that kind of whole thing of it's kind of problem, solution. What can I do? So fantastic.
The world will wear you down if you allow it, but just keep smiling and look for a solution. There will be one. And if something bad has happened to you, count it as a blessing, because it will have taught you something, either about yourself or about other people. But if you just stay positive and stay determined, then you will be successful. But if you just sit back and say, oh, the world's doing this to me, it's doing that to me, it'll just bad things, you just attract bad things, really. But stay positive, and eventually everything comes well in the end. And I know that through years and decades of experience. Doesn't matter how bad things seem at the time, there's always a solution. As I proved, really, after a divorce and a redundancy in the same year, it would have any one of those would have broken people, but not for me, really. Just, oh well. It's a lesson. Let me learn what that lesson is and learn from it and move on and find a solution.
Oh, amazing. And it is totally true. You are what you think. Oh my God, my son is now in the middle of this. I've let him know that I'm doing this reason. Now this is like the 5th call. So, but anyway, no, so I really appreciate that. You definitely are what you think. If you think you can and you think you can't, then you're absolutely right. And I think that is so powerful. And Alison has said, she really loves these sessions and speakers, and Nick has given me the focus again. So yeah. Fantastic. We really appreciate that, Alison. So guys, thank you. Really appreciate you being on here. Please do like Nick is new to Clubhouse, and also please do like him, and do look around the room and follow anyone else that you have. This is also a Facebook Live. It will be going out as a podcast at some stage, and it will also be on YouTube. So do spread the word. I'm trying to give out as much as I can and as much valuable content this year, and I'm really pushing that out. So appreciate anyone sort of following and sharing our information. And I hope to see as many of you as possible at the Property Wealth Network tomorrow night, when I am there, not only to support Nick, but to also meet a lot of others of you there as well. So thank you so much. So guys, do please pop your thanks in the chat. Yeah, so Bill said see you tomorrow. A few others have said, Craig said see you tomorrow as well. So again, thank you guys. We really appreciate you you coming and listening to us, and a huge thanks to my wonderful friend Nick. I so appreciate you and all your hard work. Oh, and there he is again, being there for me. So I will sign off now and go and speak to my son. Okay guys, so thank you so much,
Emma.
and
Thank you for listening.
take care.